Welcome to another episode of the Agent Spotlight podcast. Today I had Tim Harrison of Fennick Financial Services join me. Their office is up in Newcastle, PA, and they really offer a ton of different services for their clients in a fairly unique way. They take a pretty holistic approach to the financial services side of things, looking at how they can help somebody through retirement, but also figuring out a way to integrate the health insurance portion and Medicare for their clients. Tim's been in the business for 5 years now with Fennick Financial and working with national insurance markets. Stay tuned throughout the episode to listen to how some of the technology that NIM offers him as well as our other agents to really see how it can progress your business. If you're interested in learning more, give us a call. We'd be happy to chat. But so obviously, you're with Fennick Financial, have been there. How long have you been with them now?
I'm in my 5th year now.
5th year? Okay. So you started then basically right as Todd was taking over Eileen's?
Right.
Right around the same time then?
And I actually started, my first 3 months were with the McConkeys.
Okay.
That's kind of a story unto itself.
Yeah.
And then I stuck around with Todd there.
Okay.
So I was there right in the overlap.
Gotcha. Okay. Did you know that was coming then at the time?
Yes.
Okay.
I was actually off work, recovering from an injury, middle of COVID.
Really?
And we have, my mom actually used to work for Paul McConkey decades ago.
Okay.
They were talking, he was talking about retiring.
Yeah.
The fact that he was looking for some temporary help.
Yeah.
I was available, I could do it. So I helped out temporarily, and
Yeah.
just one thing led to another, and I stuck around after the transition.
Okay. So take me back even then a little bit before that. What were you doing up until you ended up working with them?
So I actually, my wife and I were working abroad at an international school.
Okay. Where at?
In Jordan.
Okay.
We came back during COVID. I ended up in a bike accident, had a neck injury. So we weren't traveling. We were just kind of, sitting still.
Yeah.
Although at that time, a lot of us were sitting still. But that was when I just got a call from Paul McConkey. Mm-hmm. And so I would say I was, depending on your worldview, as accidental or divine providence, that I ended up overlapping with the agency and then sticking there.
Yeah. And you did not have your insurance license then at all, right?
I did not. No, I had a business background. I had an MBA. I had some experience in a couple of different industries. Had some interests and propensities, but not anything leading me that direction.
Yeah. Okay.
Point.
So what was that process like then? Initially, whenever you started working with the McConkeys, did you get your license and everything right away?
Not right away. I was actually initially filling in just with some administrative tasks.
Sure.
They had someone else that was out dealing with health issues. So
Yeah.
we're kind of in the lurch. So I was just processing paperwork and taking notes and trying to get caught up on some tasks.
Yeah.
And it was probably then, within that next 9 months, I got my insurance license and my securities licenses.
Sure.
But that was just a process really over that first year.
Yeah. Okay. Whenever you were getting your securities license, I would say in particular, was that really mostly whenever the business kind of transitioned to Fennick Financial?
So Fennick Financial, that would have been, if I have this right, April of 21.
Okay.
And so, by the end of 21, I was done with those licenses.
Gotcha. Okay. So basically lined up in a way right along with that. Do you remember what it was like whenever you first started working with us then at that point? Because we worked with the McConkeys for a long time. I honestly don't even know exactly how it was before I started in the business then. Mm-hmm. But I personally didn't do a whole lot with them. But obviously, Todd came in and, he was doing, I think he was dabbling a little bit, at that point, but, I think it's really obviously grown a bit since then, with having someone like yourself on there. Do you remember what it was like whenever you first were, introduced to us as you guys were kind of going through that transition?
Well, yeah. And you mentioned, let me know as I came in how long Ruth's been here, 30 plus years. And that was evident in the paperwork. As I'm going through files, Ruth's name was everywhere in the health insurance files. And so that was where, clearly the McConkeys were very connected with your agency. Todd had other health insurance related business at another agency. And so it was kind of like it's become a quilt, let's say. And at that point, though, I would say, clearly my very first contracting was with NIM, and that's where a lot of the value you experience as an early, learning the ropes agent, because a lot of that, just more or less hearing from you guys what my next steps are, e-signing lots of documents, walking me through that process. So it was one of those things. I mean, I'm learning the business while I'm learning your structure and the people in your office.
Yeah. I think, it's funny because it does kind of relate to almost like every business. Not every business is just what you kind of see on, the surface level, right? There's more depth, I think, than everyone thinks to quite literally everything, I would say. Like, not to get too far into that almost, but there's always nuances to everything. It's just not, black and white, right? And like you're saying, just learning as you're going, I think it would be an issue almost if you weren't, right? Things change with everything. And, our business and our industry, especially on the Medicare side, in particular, is definitely a part of that. And, without you being in the industry prior to, 2021, it's changed a lot in the 5 years that you've been around now. It's
and I've gathered that. I have not come to a conclusion whether overall that's good or bad. It seems in a sense it's a very inconvenient time to be starting out, but it's also been positive because there are things I didn't have to unlearn. Correct. Or I didn't have to grieve their farewell or any of that.
For sure.
And there's also been that transition has also been, I think, a part of the traffic that we've seen is that there were a lot of people that, were just comfortable with the status quo. And once that was interrupted, they were looking for some help.
I cannot agree more with basically everything that you just said there, because, going back to, talking about us and, Ruth being here and things like that, we started back in 1979. We were talking about being in this building since 1979. And we also, had to go through that transition and are continuing to do so. COVID was a big thing, obviously just in general for everybody, but, we've had to unlearn things and, step into the next phase of the business, just in general, and evolve. But then on the flip side of that, not necessarily just do that internally, but also, externally with our agent partners too. And getting them to do, the exact same thing, which is obviously like 2 tasks essentially, in and of itself, not to mention doing it with each individual agent or agency, as well. So we've definitely seen that, in particular. And, going back to kind of what you're saying, I do think overall the change is, positive for that, because, anybody who is, just starting out now, like you said, one, the access that you have now compared to even whenever I first started in the business is way greater. The workflows that are now out there, the ease for quoting and things along those lines, the platforms were not really available back then. So it was still, very individualized for everything that you had to do. I mean, the time savings now is just, unbelievable. And I mean, who knows what it comes in even just the next year, let alone 3 to 5 years. I mean, technology now these days is just accelerating everything. um, which is, scary, but also not, at the same time. It's exciting because people are more used to it. They're also more, I would say, open to, utilizing it and doing those things. And, the 65-year-olds younger and younger, every day type of thing. Like they're more apt to do that, which is also great. It makes, sometimes everybody's life, easier, but, more efficient, as well. And, probably I would say, helps you be able to go through everything with them. And, so kind of going through that, take me through a little bit about your process, whenever, someone either contacts you guys or, is referred to you. So that way, anybody who would potentially be looking to work with you guys, what they'd be looking forward to.
Well, and for us, it's maybe it's a little bit unique in that a lot of our health insurance business it overlaps significantly with our investment business. And so now Todd Fennick, he's been insurance licensed since 92.
Yeah.
Securities license shortly thereafter within a few years. And so he has a very substantial group of households connected to him. And to that agency, that really a lot of people are aging into Medicare or, early retirees, very common, especially one spouse who's early and one who's on Medicare.
Yeah.
So usually that's normally, and not always, but the majority of our connections start there. And so a lot of people that we're engaging with on the health insurance side, we've known, even for me as 5 years in, well, now some of these people I've known for 5 years.
Yeah.
But then there also, of course, word of mouth. Some people assume that I only work with health insurance because their neighbor knows me from Medicare and that sort of thing. But really, it all starts with that, either word of mouth or just connection through traffic in the office. And then it's a matter of, as you were mentioning, you were talking about tech and the changes with Medicare. The changes are unsettling, but they're also inevitable. And that's true with Medicare. It's true with technology. And I think that's one of the things that I find very interesting, intriguing about this work is that you're interacting with different people all over the spectrum. People that never have had an email and get agitated when you ask them the question versus people that live their whole life on a smartphone. And so really there's a lot of discovery that goes on early on in that process.
Yeah. It's, and I know I talk about this all the time, but like it is so much that Medicare is just not one size fits all. You never know what someone's got going on in general, going back to the whole, especially, I think in some of the more, there's still very, we're in Pittsburgh right now. But across the state, just to use that as an example, like there are still very rural parts of our state in Pennsylvania that people don't use email at all. They've never even had a use for it, let alone the fact of like wanting to do it. So it is interesting whenever you're talking with people, right? Is like, okay, this person here, like you said, hey, by all means, let's go, let's get it. And you only ever even sometimes just communicate to them via email. And then other people is like, nope, I don't even have internet access. And so I think it also means, there's flexibility that we need to have, as well as agents and, educators to them to make sure that we are still able to accommodate, what they have going on in their, unique situation. Everybody's got something different, like we just talked about for that aspect, but also, going back to, even just their health preferences or, the doctors they're seeing or the prescriptions they're taking. Not everybody is utilizing, the same things as well. So it's, navigating that entire process too. And, I liked what you said in the sense of, you guys have obviously had, I mean, Todd's had a business for, a long time. And, you know, Medicare is such a natural fit for, these types of industries. The financial services industry, you're looking at, say, like personal lines for property and casualty, life insurance as well, even if it's just, annuities too, if that's just like maybe the singular thing that somebody does.
Mhm.
Because, right, like you're looking at their full scope, for a financial services, you know, client, you're taking in everything, you're, and going back to retirees, right? Like that's huge. They're not going to have, if they just were working, right? They don't have that stream of income anymore. So need to figure out, how are we going to make whatever you have in here work for the rest of your life? And then on top of that is like, the medical expenses are a huge part of that. And Medicare in general is, for about 90% of people, the only way that they can get their health insurance whenever they turn 65.
Mhm.
So I think it's great just in general that, you guys have taken that on as part of your business, because I do believe it is a natural fit and it just really enhances the value overall for like what you guys offer to your clients. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think there are a number of topics that are complex, that are scary, that are long term, and they have a huge impact on someone's life.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking into retirement, healthcare, for a variety of reasons, is a big issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're worried about costs and inflation. We know we need more of it as we get older. If we're thinking about our money running out, well, these scary health situations that our friends and neighbors have popping up, that's making us think about those things for ourselves. Yeah, it's a natural fit, and I think that's also where we all look to people with experience and knowledge in those areas that are complex, that we don't feel equipped to deal with, that have that huge impact on our lives. And so that's, to me, it's something very fulfilling about that aspect of the work. Is it's a real need in an area you wish you didn't have to think about. You're buying insurance, health insurance is buying something you hope you'll never use, and hoping it's as cheap as possible, but it doesn't always work out that way. But yeah, that's definitely, I've seen the fit. It's been very helpful for me to have that kind of on ramp with people, to be able to get to know them as people, to know where they come from and where they're headed, and just to fit the pieces together in a way that, because it's complex, you can only make it so simple and still, do right by the client to inform them of what they're getting into, but then also being able to kind of navigate that so it's not, you're just thrown in the wide world and have to make a choice.
Well, and that brings up a really good point, what you just finished there, because, and I forget, I was just talking with someone about this, yesterday, and I've been talking about it kind of more and more, is, you know, most people obviously say they're not working until they're age 18, just say throw that out there as the number,
Mhm.
right? So say your first 18 years, right? You're just under your parents' type insurance. But say if somebody starts working at 18, just to throw that out there, like I said, is their employer provides them their insurance generally. So, it's, hey, here's your one option, right? And it is what it is. But they're not involved in the process or, anything along those lines. It's just, hey, here's what it is. Here's what it may cost, or the employer's just like, I'm picking up the cost.
Mhm.
Or maybe it's, hey, here's your two options or three, choose one of them. And the vast majority of the time is like, all right, I like the price of this one, and cool, we're just going to do that. And that's basically about it. And that same exact process happens until they retire. Whether that's, at 50, 55, 60, 65, whatever the number is, or more. But so they've went, their entire working life just being either told this is your option, or here's your one or two options, pick one.
Mhm.
And that's it. So they know nothing about how to navigate it on their own. And then, they get to Medicare whenever they're retiring, and it's not up to the employer to know how to do that. They're busy running their business. Their potential like group rep who is helping with the employee benefits, they may or may not do anything on the Medicare side. So if they don't, then it's just, all right, you're retiring. You've been told what to do for 64 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got to do it on your own. Go figure it out. And that's it.
Yeah, and they've received 1,000 pieces of mail. I'd love to know, there's surely data on how many exposures on commercials and things like that. So your mind is swirling with all the various plan types, even though you don't really know what they are. You've just heard all the terms and the companies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so we hear a lot. I mean, at that point, it's tell me what to do,
Mm-hmm.
or my neighbor has this. I think that's what I want.
Yeah.
Because it's overwhelming.
Correct. It is overwhelming. And it's, I think, going back to, saying that I think it's great for what you guys are doing, because it's an educational process on how to navigate it, right? You mentioned navigating through it. That's really what this is overall, right? There, it's, you mentioned learning as you go. Yeah, we're learning as we go as well. Learning the process, learning maybe how to hone in the process a little bit better, make it easier and more streamlined for the client, from our perspective, making it easier and more streamlined for the client as well as the agent, to help them, be better prepared and, things along those lines. But it truly is, I think, an actual educational process. And it also makes you feel pretty dang good to know that you helped them through this whenever they've told you they're overwhelmed. They've told you they have no idea what to do. And at the end, whenever you've actually got them to where they need to be, and you either just like, if you're face to face with them, like you see the sigh of relief, or, at the end, they're just like, okay, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
We're done. We're good. You're like, yeah, you're good. Everything's fine. We're moving on. They're like, holy crap, that was awesome.
Yeah, it is always funny. So you walk through the whole process, you're trying to make sure that you cover every base. You want to know all about the doctors and the meds and, health situations going on. We have to take into account, make sure you're well covered, go through all that, find a good fit. And then when it's actually enrollment time, that process is always, you assume there's a lot more than that, but that was just to make sure we ended up in the right spot.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Jumping through that is actually the easy part.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, like the enrollment portion is just like, all right, boom, snap of the fingers. We're done in a couple minutes. Like that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the getting everything in place, up to then. It is an actual process. It's not just, now granted, hey, if somebody has everything in place, knows exactly what they want, and they just come to you and be like, hey, Tim, I want to get enrolled with X, Y, or Z plan. I have everything. I've already done my research. Everything's in place. All right, cool. That's going to take us 5 minutes. Like,
right.
We'll be done. 99% of people, that is not the case. They need to get everything in place, and that part is a process. It doesn't just happen, at the snap of a fingers like that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to actually get everybody to where they need to be, and get the things in place and all that. Sometimes that's a 12-month process if they've called you whenever they're just turning 64. Sometimes it's a couple day thing depending on how late they waited to get everything done. So it all depends on where they're at and what they got going on at the same time. But it goes back to the being flexible, and thankfully, in a sense, having the technology aspect to be able to get those things done whenever you need to, right? Overall, going back to some of the maybe like the technology stuff, like how is some of the stuff that we offer been able to help you and Fennick?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's been I think very important, especially these last couple years. Things are more complex, and I would say a lot more competitive, right? It's not like you're just going to have a few kits on hand and they're going to fit most people.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so I would say the connector move was welcome, very helpful, just as far as one thing. When I started out about 5 years ago, I was amazed the number of pieces of paper that we print and copy and mail, because it doesn't have to happen that way, right? But the industry is slow in making the transition, and the beneficiaries too are understandably they're in two camps on that. But as that's accelerated, it's been extremely helpful. It's very nice to be able to quote and sort all in one place, or in a couple of places, and to spend more of your brain power on walking someone through the process instead of looking things up in some kind of a analog way.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you there. And especially when it comes to the prescriptions, and in particular, like prescriptions are such a huge driver for people. And, with the way that things have changed on the prescription side, with, the introduction of the deductibles on basically every plan, there's some out there that still don't have it, right? But, most of them do. And switching from copay to coinsurance as well. So, copay, flat dollar amount, coinsurance is a percentage. And, so many times, somebody asks you, before we had those types of tools is, okay, it's going to be 25%. That's your co-insurance for this. Okay, well, 25% of what? Well, we don't have that info actually.
Yep.
And, with something like Connecture, it's so great because, even though there's not that, fixed price that shows, we get estimated retail cost, that's a whole different topic about the pharmaceutical industry and everything for how that type of stuff is, displayed and whatnot. But, at least now, like if somebody does ask, I'd be like, hey, this may not be exact because, that t-shirt that you go and buy is the same $15 at every single store that you would go to. But, this prescription is not reported the same way. So like it might be one price here, one price there, one price here, and 5 different places might say 5 different things. But this, we can at least get a good estimate and average, essentially, and give you a better idea for what you got going on and what it's going to cost you. And then, relating it all the way back to the retirement aspect and, making sure that their financials are in place. Many of these people are on fixed incomes at that point. They may not have investments to tap into or, 401ks and, pension plans or, whatever it ends up being, there's a number of people out there that just have their Social Security and that's it.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of those people, something that I value with just that whole process is there are a lot of things that you can do to help people to provide value to them that, don't directly relate to their health insurance. Now, I mean, it's health care. So various, state and federal programs, just being able to navigate the complexity of that, that I've definitely seen a lot of people that were strapped financially, and part of being strapped was they weren't taking advantage of things that they didn't know existed.
Yeah. Take me a little bit through that. Like, how have you been able to help some people through that process?
Well, I think a big part of what happens is somebody will come in. Now, there has to be some moment of pain that drives them to seek someone out, because some people just enroll in the first thing they get a mailing for, or enroll in something that their neighbor has. And then once those costs are tremendous, right? And especially with recent changes, like I've seen that with PACE and PaceNet these last couple years, it wasn't that critical for a lot of people when there was a flat copay of $45 or $47 for these expensive meds. But once you're paying a coinsurance and you get hit with a $600 bill in January, or you're paying $250 a month, now all of a sudden it's a pain point. So, I joked last AEP I might as well have been wearing a PaceNet shirt, because I brought it up with just about everyone. Now, some people we knew didn't qualify, but for those that did, I think usually in those cases, the assumption is that the assistance programs are for other people, for people that have no resources. and not understanding that there are different levels, right? And that's why, PaceNet came up so much, because compared to some of the other programs, it's a relatively high cutoff.
Sure.
Um,
For those who may not know, do you mind explaining a little bit more of what PACE and PaceNet is?
yeah, so they are, it's a state-funded program that covers prescription costs. And so it limits your co-pays to certain levels depending on your income. And the big selling point for most cases is your brand name medications at the highest income level on PaceNet are limited to $15. And so when you're dealing with 200 or 250, now obviously your insurance is paying first still, but then my understanding PaceNet comes in at that point, brings it down to that copay, and it's something that's manageable, and it helps. I've seen people that spend a tremendous proportion of their income on their health care, and for a lot of people, it cuts that down significantly
Yeah.
just in that one shot.
No, absolutely. And it's definitely very important for people to know that these types of programs exist,
Mhm.
right? And PACE and PaceNet are definitely not the only ones, but they are very popular in general because of the fact, it's above that medical assistance limit.
Right.
And, most people just think, hey, oh, I don't qualify for the medical assistance, so I don't have any other
Mhm.
options. So I love the fact that you are taking a proactive approach for that and bringing it up to your clients. Many people don't do that, or they don't realize or remember, that something like that exists, or, they're not in the situation maybe that they are getting their income. Maybe they're in a different line of business, they just like on a property and casualty side in a sense, just to throw that out there. Not, saying that everybody is in that scenario, but, there's sometimes that, they're just not getting their income, and maybe that person is not mentioning it either. Where, you guys are, positioned in a unique scenario where a lot of that stuff because you work with them on the financial services side.
Yeah, and it's like, even if somebody comes in just kind of out of the blue, having that perspective and that bent, it's not a matter of just wanting to have a happy health insurance client, uh, and just kind of check that off and keep them happy, because then they'll just be mad they can't afford these things. But they're not going to be mad at you. You didn't tell them about PaceNet. But when you're looking at it to say, how can I help this person live a high quality life in retirement, extend their assets? That's where it does all fit together, and it
Yeah.
makes sense.
It's taking it, it's, taking that extra step. It's not just looking at what they're doing on the surface level and then, saying, okay, here, boom, go ahead, next person, come on in, let's get you signed up, and, so on and so forth.
Right.
It's actually taking that kind of, holistic and customized approach for each one of them to make sure that it all fits. It all fits for what they have going on, in particular. So going and kind of zooming out maybe a little bit, what are some of the next things, that you guys are building towards, and maybe even you in particular, now that you have been in the business, say for, 5 years now, have a pretty good footing, at this point, or have a good understanding of, what's going on, and things along those lines, and probably getting more comfortable with the changes that have occurred. What's next for, you, Tim, as well as Fennick Financial?
So I think, when it comes with on the health insurance side, and specifically with Medicare, my kind of next project is, I would really like to streamline things. I mentioned earlier that we kind of have a quilt that we've put together, or, a quilt that's come together over time. And now that we have these opportunities to be assisted by technology to keep things all in one place, the more I can streamline that, the more I can actually be busy, doing the things that are important, that are important for a human being to do, let's say. And that's where, the amount of traffic that's been driven by the changes, even though I'm only in year 5, I hit the limit on what I can do. I don't have more hours in the day during AEP in particular, where it's just there is no way to do more. And so a lot of those things have to become streamlined.
Yep.
Ultimately, I'm very focused on word of mouth and referrals, doing right by people, caring about them, and they talk. And so it's an easy way to focus on the future because it does compound. But to be able to do that, I can't be flipping through formularies and everything else nonstop in the meeting. It has to be efficient and
Correct.
one-on-one.
Yeah.
So streamlining, making better use of technology as we have beneficiaries that are more tech capable, moving more and more away from paper without doing a disservice to the ones that can't make the transition. But just, I think for me, that's the big thing, getting more efficient.
Yeah.
Being more equipped with technology to spend more time with people.
Yeah, that's awesome. And if anybody wanted to work with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Probably give me a phone call, 724-658-3540. We're up in Newcastle, so
Go stop by the office.
Yep, we can. I know we have a lot of hot dog places, a lot of other good Italian food. If you want to stop by, I'll give you some recommendations on that after we're done.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
My
Had a great
pleasure.
conversation, and we'll catch you next time.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Agent Spotlight podcast. I hope you enjoyed the content that we went through today. If you're interested in learning more and any of this resonated with you, please feel free to check out our website, nimbroker.com. Give us a call, 412-782-1979, or send us an email at info@nimbroker.com. It's never too late to get started in Medicare. We're here to partner with you. We only win if you win.